The Rebels starting off strong, but now it's time for the SEC. We welcome in Evie Van Pelt from the Rebel Walk to break down Ole Miss and Kentucky for us. Evie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I've missed being
Absolutely.
on.
I know it. It's been quite a long time. We appreciate you being here. It's good to see you. So this Lane Kiffin ride has been quite a big deal at Ole Miss. Of course, coming off a Sugar Bowl appearance and a 10-win season, and now off to a 4-0 start, perfect in non-conference play. So, just your thoughts about where the program sits right now when you take everything into account, recruiting and otherwise.
Well, I tell you what, the Lane train's been rolling as of late. So, really, I think actually since he arrived in Oxford in December of 2019, folks have been really excited. Ole Miss, to put it succinctly, I guess, in their last 18 games, the Rebels are 15-3. So interestingly, Kentucky, their upcoming opponent, Kentucky is 15-3 in its last 18 games. So going to be interesting. I think both programs are on a upward trajectory, if I can say. But fans are excited with Kiffin. You know, as you mentioned, last year, great season, first 10-win regular season in school history. So, that's definitely something. Big home winning streak. I think it's like at 12 games right now, dating back to 2020. So there's a lot of positive things going on in Oxford. Lane killed it in the transfer portal king, as he's known. So, and I'm just been really impressed with how those guys in the portal have really performed, probably beyond what anybody, maybe other than Lane Kiffin and his staff, would have thought. I mean, they seem to have hit it out of the park with those guys.
Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media. Not everyone knows that we're here breaking down college football with you each and every day. And of course, join Evie and her staff there at the Rebel Walk. So looking at a number of changes during the offseason, in addition to a transfer portal move, of course, you lose Jeff Levy to Oklahoma. He moves on. A lot of people may not necessarily notice or recognize Ole Miss's rushing attack because they think Lane Kiffin, they think throw it all the time, but led the SEC in rushing. And an interesting duo of running backs there in the backfield that have been extremely effective. A lot of people across the nation know about Zach Evans because he was a 5-star coming out of high school. But, when it comes to Quinshon Judkins, not a lot of people know that he is a force to be reckoned with.
Right, absolutely, and is a true freshman. And the funny thing about it, he is currently the SEC co-freshman of the week. And leads the team. And I think, he was only a 3-star recruit. So I just think, sometimes, the stars, obviously a 5-star can be a 5-star, but every now and then, I don't think anybody at Ole Miss would trade Quinshon for anything. And last year there was a picture, Quinshon played in the state playoffs, and Lane Kiffin was there. I believe it was December. It was a cold December day, and he's sitting in the stands on metal bleachers, and somebody, took a picture of him. And I was thinking at the time, for Lane Kiffin to be out in December in the bad weather, sitting there in the stands, actually watching a kid in person, this kid may be something. And what Kiffin has said about him recently is, he said he's got vision, and they ain't teaching vision. You know what I mean? So he's phenomenal. And I think, to your point, the Rebels are number 4 in the country in rushing offense. And I think 2 of the service academies are ahead of them. So there may only be one Power 5 school that's ahead of them. So they're really, really doing a good job with their rushing attack.
Matt Corral, of course, had a tremendous career at Ole Miss. Jackson Dart takes over, another transfer addition. Your impressions about Jackson Dart through 4 games?
It's interesting. He and Luke Altmaier were in a quarterback competition throughout the spring and the fall, and Altmaier was there and was Corral's backup and played in the Sugar Bowl. Both really good quarterbacks, and I really do think that we saw growth in both of them. And I think the competition was really good for Jackson. And who knew he could run so well? He's averaging over 6 yards a carry himself. So I think Lane kind of would prefer if maybe he wouldn't do that as much. Maybe it's a little bit like Matt Corral, slide a little bit more rather than putting your shoulder down and knocking the Georgia Tech guy on his behind. So that was fun to see. But yeah, he's been doing a great job. He's got a cannon for an arm, and so I think he's getting more and more comfortable with the offense and with his receivers. So I think I don't know. He's got nowhere. I'm not going to say nowhere to go but up, because I guess everybody could go down, but he's doing great, and the ceiling is really high is what I mean to say.
Got Evie Van Pelt on the line from the Rebel Walk. Head on over there, check out Ole Miss football coverage with Rebels, with a huge game coming up at home against Kentucky, couple undefeateds in the SEC. Evie, you mentioned to me before we started to record, Kari Coleman, who leads the team in sacks and tackles for loss, did not play against Tulsa, and his status is up in the air. We know little about injury reports in college football, but obviously he's been a key factor on a defense that, again, I think reputation is hard to shake. Ole Miss struggled on that side of the football for quite a while, and but they're a much better unit than most people know about.
Oh, they are. And I think that a lot of people would be really surprised by some of their statistics. I want to say, I can look it up here real quick, but in the SEC, I believe right now, the total defense, I want to say they're maybe sixth. Scoring defense, they're third in the conference. So, what a jump in the right direction that is from 2 years ago. Actually last year, their defense did really well and improved to the point where I think they gave up almost 14 points fewer per game last year than they did in 2020. And I know that that's their goal this year, is to improve on that even more. But yeah, they're, you mentioned Jeff Levy going to Oklahoma. Well, DJ Durkin also left and went to Texas A&M and is their defensive coordinator. So we lost both coordinators in Oxford, and Chris Partridge, who was the co-coordinator last year, but Durkin did the defensive play calling. So, but Partridge has taken over and has a very aggressive mindset. I mean, the players are really, they talk about all the time, play violently. So, that's kind of an interesting way to put it, but they really are aggressive. And we see that a little bit more with Partridge's play calling.
Evie, with all these positive aspects on both sides of the ball, it was still a one-score game against Tulsa. They scored to make it 35-27 with about 10 minutes left in the game. So there were plenty of opportunities for them to take it down to the wire. Ole Miss's defense stood up for 3 consecutive drives, forced them to punt. So it was really the defense that made a stand there, but they weren't able to break away. So there's obviously a few concerns out there, a few things that need to be shored up and upgraded. So what would be your assessment of some needed upgrades?
I tell you what, I think that you have, and first of all, I mean, Kiffin was very disappointed in that performance. I mean, to not score a point in the second half for a Lane Kiffin offense is just, that doesn't happen a lot. So he was not pleased with that. I think honestly, though, he said there were, with mistakes come a lot of opportunities to learn. And so they had a number of opportunities after that game. And, I'm not really that worried about it. I think that it gets hard. Kentucky had a close game against Northern Illinois, I believe it was last weekend. I think, the offensive line needs to play a little bit better. But, that being said, the center, Caleb Warren, went out with an injury, and Eli Acker, a guard, slid over and played center. And, I just think sometimes, then that kind of has a domino effect of other people moving in different spots to help fill in. So Zach Evans didn't play the second half of that game. He had a hip pointer. We're hoping he's back. If not, I think you're going to see a whole lot of Quinshon. So, I think there were just some things that it just happens every time, every now and then you have a game like that. And I think that they really have identified some of their areas where they need to work on.
Evie, obviously everyone counts on Alabama and Georgia being there at the end. Other than that, Vandy's at the bottom. And then, my goodness, you could throw a blanket over the rest of them, and certainly some teams have played better than others. Arkansas is a solid club, but they're coming off a loss against Texas A&M. We're seeing a Kentucky team that obviously hasn't tripped up yet, and they beat Florida in the swamp. Tennessee's had a couple significant wins. Ole Miss is right there at 4-0. So this is two teams that are somewhat underregarded, but they're both undefeated. And it seems like the winner of this game may obviously be taking a step in the right direction and could make some noise in their particular division. So this is a pretty key game here.
You're definitely right. I think this is a game that, should Ole Miss win this game, they've got Vandy on the road, they've got Auburn at home, and they go to Baton Rouge to play LSU. And LSU isn't, I mean, I don't know what they're going to end up, but they're not the LSU, of a couple of years ago. So realistically, I mean, Ole Miss could be undefeated going into that game against Alabama. And so, because I mean, Auburn, I don't mean to diss Auburn, but they got some issues right now, and they do play in Oxford. So I think that's helpful for Ole Miss. But yeah, it's a really key game. I mean, Kentucky's ranked number 7 in the country. I just think that whoever wins this game, I mean, it's a big one. It's a big one, and will really give a lot of momentum to either one. And that was a big win in the swamp for Kentucky, but I will say that the player who had the pick 6 in that game was none other than Kedron Smith, who used to play at Ole Miss, and Jacquez Jones is their leading tackler for the Wildcats, and he used to play at Ole Miss, so they're going to have a homecoming of sorts. Really super guys. I talk with Jacquez's dad probably every other day or so. So I'm happy Jacquez is having some success. I hope he doesn't have quite as much success Saturday, but I still wish him the best.
Take a week off, Jacquez.
That's right. That's right.
You can continue your awesome season
right.
next week.
Right.
Ole Miss and Kentucky getting together at Vaught Hemingway Stadium on Saturday. So, Evie, a lot of people haven't watched Ole Miss. A lot of people that watch us that love college football across the board aren't necessarily Rebel fans.
Right.
They just watch the big games. They haven't seen Ole Miss this season, but they'll be checking this one out again. 2 of the top 15 teams in the country. So who are some of your standout players on both sides of the ball? Not necessarily the star players, but who can we be looking out for on either side of the ball that may need to step up in this one?
I think if people haven't been watching, they really need to take a look at the freshman running back, Quinjon Judkins, that I've been raving about. I mean, I'm raving about him, but Lane Kiffin has raved, and Lane Kiffin doesn't really rave a whole lot about anybody, but he does with Quinjon. He's a special player. So watch for him and see what kind of game he's having. If Zach Evans can play, he's also a phenomenal running back. And, like you said, the Rebels led the SEC in rushing last year. A lot of people don't think of a Lane Kiffin offense as being such a ground-oriented offense. But and of course, I think Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver. I mean, I know he's a star and a lot of people know his name, but I think as he goes, the Rebels go. And I think if he has a big game, if Kentucky tries to, stack the box and stop the running backs, then I think we're going to maybe open things up for Mingo. And a name that probably a lot of people aren't familiar with is Malik Keith. And he is a wide receiver for Ole Miss who actually transferred from Mississippi State. So he was playing for the Bulldogs last year, and now he's playing for the Rebels. And we're very happy he's there because he's a fantastic receiver. So he's definitely one to watch. On the defensive line, I think number 2, Cedric Johnson, a defensive end, is phenomenal. And I think he's kind of the heir apparent to Sam Williams on the Ole Miss defense. I had a chance to talk to him at SEC Media Days, and man, he was sure keeping up with Sam and getting drafted by the Cowboys. And, because once you see that with a player who was just, playing right next to you a year ago, it really, it's very motivating, and it kind of seems more real. Like, wow, Sam's with the Cowboys. I can do that too. Tavius Robinson, the other defensive end, big, 6'7", long, phenomenal pass rusher. He's one to keep an eye out on. And then the linebackers, like I say, I hope Kari Coleman is back. If he's not, Troy Brown has been doing a really good job. He's a transfer also. So got a lot of transfer pieces. AJ Finley, who is a safety who picked off Tulsa last week. I look for him to maybe get another one this weekend. So
Evie, getting away from this particular game, this particular team, but looking at Lane Kiffin. We know what the track record and the resume and the experience is. It's a couple years at each stop and move on, whether that was his decision or somebody else's decision. We know what that's been. Ole Miss, we can evaluate this job in a number of ways, whether it's a top of the line job or just a really good job that possibly somebody may want to opt to move on to somewhere else. You know, how do Rebel fans look at that? Because, you know, you want the success, but there might be some folks knocking on his door. The more success comes, and has he alluded to this being a final stop or looking at it as a destination job?
Well, what I can tell you is every time the Auburn job opens up, there's Auburn fans hopping all over my timeline talking about Lane's going to Auburn. Well, I don't think in any world Lane is leaving for Auburn. I think what's interesting to me is Lane really seems to have settled in the community. And I don't know if you know, but his kids had lived in California with their mom, and his daughter, his oldest daughter, has moved to Oxford to live with Lane for her senior year of high school and go to Oxford High School. So she's there right now. And I think that means the world to him to have her there. And he told us recently that she had narrowed it down and then decided that she wants to go to Ole Miss next year for school. So while I can't say that Lane Kiffin is going to make any decision based on his child, you and I both have daughters, and you know that's kind of a big deal, you know, if your kids are happy. And so, you know, never say never. But I think that, you know, last year when his name was mentioned from every job, you know, a lot of Miami, you know, whatever. I think a lot of Rebels worried about it, but I think that now maybe perhaps they feel just a little bit easier, a little bit better about it. He did say, you probably heard, maybe about a month ago, he was talking and he actually said, he was talking about Oxford and Ole Miss, and he said, I needed Oxford and Ole Miss more than Oxford and Ole Miss needed me. And that kind of gives me goosebumps every time I say it, just because it was really, you know, he's not really a mushy kind of guy. But it was very heartfelt to me. Like, you know, at the point he was in his life, this place embraced him. And I think he has an appreciation for that.
Good stuff. Evie Van Pelt, the Rebel Walk, big game coming up on Saturday night. Get yourself ready, get yourself prepped and knowledged on Ole Miss and Kentucky. Evie, it's great to see you. Everybody else, get on over to the Rebel Walk. We thank you so much, Evie, for stopping by.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Maybe you'll have me back on again sometime.
Absolutely. You've got the open invite.
Woohoo! Thank you. I appreciate it.